Honestly, the process is the process, and it's not novel. It's the things that you already know, and it's boring, baby. So we're throwing novelty out the window, and let's begin with this video. Today, we're going to talk about a 6-step process for achieving your goals. Now, as I'm recording this, it's the first part of the year. We are almost done with January. And as we know, many of us have made New Year's resolutions or have set new goals that we are working towards. And this is notoriously a time of the year where those New Year's resolutions that we set out in the beginning of the year are starting to falter. We're starting to abandon those goals. As a matter of fact, there is a day in January that's called Quitter's Day, sadly enough, and that's where many of us abandon our goals. We often abandon them after the first week of January. Now, this is the first video in a series that I'm calling the Metabolic Health Starter Challenge, and I think it's very helpful and fitting for this challenge to start with a process for goal setting. Now, I talk about metabolic health a lot on my channel, and the reason why I focus so much on metabolic health is because we know that poor metabolic health is at the root of so many of the chronic conditions that we see that are on the rise today. And the purpose of this Metabolic Health Starter Challenge is to focus on the foundational aspects of metabolic health. And during this series, we're going to focus on the foundational aspects of good metabolic health. Today, we're going to talk about a process for achieving your goals. Throughout this series, we're going to be talking about nutrition, physical activity, stress management, social connection, sleep, and we're going to also include a planning portion. If these topics interest you, I encourage you to consider subscribing to this channel and hitting that bell so you can be notified when I upload my next video. All right, let's get into it. So today we're going to be talking about 6 steps to help you achieve your goals. Now, these 6 steps are part of a process. And I encourage you to write this down, or you can always come back to this video. Again, this will be a part of the series, so you can come back to it as much and often as you need. All right, so the first thing I want to say is that I'm probably not going to tell you anything that you have not already heard before. I really want us to throw this idea of novelty or something new out the window, because much of what we want to achieve has already been done. Processes have been made, and there are formulas for success. So I'm actually going to be going more into detail with the formulas for success in one of our steps. So it doesn't mean to tune out or to skip this video, because what I'm doing is I'm compiling a lot of the things that we already know we should be doing. Many times we hear things, but we're not ready to receive the information or to take action. Hopefully this video is hitting you at a time where you're ready to receive it. You are ready to take action when you're ready to take the steps to move you forward. So we're throwing novelty out the window, and let's begin. So step number 1 is to decide and define. We have to decide what we want. And I know you're probably thinking, well, that's obvious, Jess, but oftentimes we overlook the obvious or we disregard it as unimportant. But I'm saying this is step number 1 because it is just that important and that foundational when it comes to achieving your goals. You have to decide and clearly define what it is that you want. So when we're talking about deciding, I made a video earlier on deciding and determining your why, and why it's so important to have a why that is rooted in something substantial and significant. Like, it has to be very, very important to you specifically. Oftentimes when we're deciding or we're setting goals, sometimes we're setting goals because of social norms or because someone is telling us that we need to do something, right? It's not quite in line with our own beliefs and desires. So when you're going through the process of deciding, it really needs to be rooted in something that is substantial. For example, for me, I shared that my reason for wanting to live a healthy life and create these healthy habits that are in line with good metabolic health is because I want to live, God willing, I want to live a long and healthy life so that I can be there for my son and my loved ones and fulfill my purpose. That's substantial for me. I come from a family history of a lot of chronic conditions and chronic disease, and have had family pass away far too soon. And it's painful when you lose loved ones so soon and you feel like they should still be here, right? That why is strong and significant for me, and it helps me. It's strong enough to get me through the periods where I feel like it's tough, right? It's strong enough to help me achieve the goals, my health goals, and to stay consistent with my healthy habits. So for you, it's going to be really important when you're deciding during that decision phase is to have a reason that is strong and substantial and meaningful to you. And only you can decide what that is and why that is. So that's the deciding. And then defining. You want to define your goals. You want to get them out of your dreams and into something that is actionable. A goal is something that you can take action on. And you want to be very specific, and you need to know, how are you going to know when you've achieved your goal, right? So these things should be actionable. They should be measurable. I know all of us have heard of SMART goals, but there is merit to this, right? SMART stands for specific, measurable, actionable, relevant, or realistic, and timely. So you want to be able to measure them in a specific time. Now, the time portion is debatable, and I'll talk about that later as well. Sometimes we're caught in this loop where we're constantly saying to ourselves, I know I should be doing this, but I'm not. Or I know I need to eat better, but ... Or you keep saying I keep saying I'm gonna start working out more consistently, but ... I should really start exercising more, but ... Or my healthcare provider tells me I really need to start watching my blood pressure, or I really need to start eating differently because my blood pressure is on a rise, or ... Or you keep saying things that you should be doing, but you haven't quite decided to do it, right? So it's just things that are kind of floating around in your mind that you're not ready to, or you don't know if you want to take action on. For other people, there are these dreams that we have that are kind of stuck in our brain, stuck in our mind, stuck in our dreams. Dreams about being healthier. You think about being a person who exercises more, or eats healthier, or who lives an active lifestyle. You like the idea of being more active. You like the idea of going up for more walks, and you think about being a type of person who goes out for more walks with your family, having energy to play with your kids. You think about wanting to be free of your chronic conditions. You dream about having to take less medications, or you dream about growing older and having energy to play with your grandkids and being there for your grandkids. And many of us have these things that we dream about, these wants, these wishes, these desires that we can really envision ourselves in. We can really put ourselves in that scenario of having that thing that we're dreaming about. So how do you get those things, those wishes, those desires from out of your dreams and into reality? We do that by turning those dreams into goals so that we can then take action on them. And then you want to define your goals, and you want to define specific outcomes. To do this, we have to get really specific, and you have to think about, how am I going to know once I've achieved my goal? So, for example, you have a goal of, I want to be healthier. How are you going to know when you've achieved that goal? All right, so you have a goal of, I want to get better control over my prediabetes, or I want to get better control over my type 2 diabetes. So, for example, for the person with prediabetes, you'll know that you've achieved your goal when you lower your A1C, right? And you get specific. I'm going to stabilize my blood sugar levels. I'm going to start monitoring my blood sugar levels, right? So you get as granular and specific as you need to be so that you can actually start taking action on those goals. You'll normalize your A1C and get it below 5.7%. For the person who their specific goal is, I want to lose weight, one marker, one outcome apart from the scale that's a metabolic marker would be, I want to lower my waist circumference by 1 to 2 inches. Looking at this from a metabolic health standpoint, I want to normalize my blood pressure. I want to lower my cholesterol levels. I want to lower my triglyceride levels. I want to increase my HDL, my good cholesterol, right? I want to lower my LDL cholesterol. I want to eat more home-cooked meals throughout the week. I want to exercise more. Turning those dreams into goals. I have a goal to exercise 5 days out of the week, with 2 to 3 of those days being strength training. I have a goal to drink more water. I want to drink 2 32-ounce glasses of water per day. I have a goal to complete a Spartan in July. These are all things that you can work towards. They're specific and they're actionable. And these are tangible things that you can actually follow and track so that you know objectively when you've attained your goal. And it's specific. Now, the next step is to write it down. I know you hear this, but are you doing it? People who write their goals down are far more likely to achieve their goals than the people who keep them stuck in their brains. You have to get those goals out of your head and onto something tangible and put it into real life. Remember, the dreams are the things that we have percolating in our minds. Goals, we write down. Okay, this is you getting serious and you taking your dreams and putting them into reality, something that you can act upon, something that you can see daily. Dreams we keep in our minds, goals we write down. And you want to write down the actions that you're going to take to get to your goals. And you want to be specific. Write down your outcome measures, the things we talked about before. How will you know when you've achieved your goal? Write them down, but keep them out and available so that you can see them frequently. One reason this is helpful is because it reminds you to do it. You wrote these goals down 2 weeks ago and you tuck them away. Life gets busy and you just start getting back into the habit, into your normal routines that are not in line with the goals that you set out for yourself, right? It's not progressing you towards achieving those goals. So having those goals and those action steps, the specific goals with the specific outcomes and action steps, that you can see on a regular basis can help remind you to keep it in your mind, your forefront, that this is something that you told yourself, you decided that you're going to do and you're taking it seriously. The next reason why writing it down is important and keeping it available in places where you can frequently see it is because it subconsciously, you're telling your brain that it's something that's important to you. And this, on a subconscious level, it helps your brain pay attention to things that are in line with your goals. So, for example, if you're the person who said, I'm going to start eating healthier, I'm going to start having more home cooked meals, your brain is going to be more aware of things that are going to be in line with you meeting that goal. For example, you'll be more aware when you see things like meal prepping, because that's in line with you eating more home cooked meals, right? So then you can dive into meal prep or easy recipes, quick recipes. Like you're just more in tune to the things that are in line with that goal that you had set out for yourself. And the brain is pretty cool, right? So there's this thing in our brain called the reticular activating system. And it's often likened to like the bouncer at a club, right? If you think about how much information and data we are bombarded with on a daily basis, like even me just sitting here, if I'm paying attention to everything, I'm paying attention to the lighting, I'm paying attention to the fact that, I'm looking out there, there's my backyard and there's a squirrel running across the fence, or my cat's over here next to me, looking at me, staring at me for whatever reason. I'm paying attention to what I can hear, what I can see, what I can smell, what I can taste. Like all of my senses are activated, and it's a lot of data, right? That's a lot of information that our brains are filtering, and our brain tells us what's important. What do we actually need to be paying attention to in this moment? So when you write your goals down, again, you're telling your brain what's important to focus on. And when you write it down and you see it daily, you're really reminding your brain, your subconscious, to be aware of things that are in line with this thing that you have set out for yourself. So the other reason why writing them down and having them in a place where you can see them is because it can keep you motivated, right? Especially if you write down, along with writing down your goals, you write down your why. When you've decided, writing down the reason why can help you when it comes to going through the muck or the hard, going through the process of achieving your goals. We're going to talk about that in a moment, but that part, it's not easy. It's that's the hard part. So having this thing that you can go back to and review and look at when you're in the midst of actually doing the work to achieve your goals can be helpful in keeping you motivated. And remember, this reason that you chose, the reason why you decided to make these goals in the first place, is something that is rooted in a powerful reason for you. It's substantial for you. So that's why step number 1 is so foundational, because you're going to keep going back to it. Okay. And all of these steps you're going to see, they kind of build upon each other. Now, step number 3 is find the process. Everything that we want to do, someone has already done it, right? And there's a formula for success or a pathway to success. And again, that's what I'm talking about. Throw novelty out the window, right? A lot of us, when it comes to our health, improving our health, we know the things that we need to do, but it's a matter of doing it, right? So find the process that's going to work for you. And later in this series, we're going to talk about these aspects of nutrition, physical activity, sleep, all those pillars of good metabolic health. We're going to talk about a process. So stay tuned for that. But a lot of this stuff you already know. Again, novelty we're throwing out the window. The thing is, you want to identify the process and follow it. That's the part where it gets hard, is that, again, we know what we need to be doing, but we're not actually doing it. So if this is landing on you at a time where you're open and you're ready to receive it and you're ready to take action, this is where you're going to pull in all those things that you already know that you should be doing, and to develop a plan of action. Honestly, the process is the process. It's the things that you already know, and it's boring, baby. Like it is boring. And it's why I led with, let's throw novelty out the window. Oftentimes we're thinking, okay, there's got to be something new and exciting, a new and exciting way to get healthy, or a new and exciting device, or like biohacking techniques and wearables and all these things that are coming out. And yes, they can be helpful and they can boost our journey, but the foundations, the basics are still the same. And if we can't master the basics of good health, it would be ill-advised to, focus on red light therapy when your nutrition isn't in order, right? Or focusing on like cold plunging when your sleep isn't in order, or you're not exercising consistently, right? Like the basics or the foundation is where it's at. Set yourself up for success by establishing and mastering the basic things before becoming distracted by all these other things, right? The process is the process, and it's not novel. It's boring. It's not exciting. It's not fresh. It's not new for many of us, right? For when it comes to health, we know the basics. We know that we need to be eating more fresh fruits and vegetables. eating more whole food, right? We know we need to be minimizing the ultra processed foods from our diets and eating out less and doing more home cooked. We know that we need to be moving our bodies more. We know that we're primarily in these sedentary jobs and we need to be actually moving our body more throughout the day and exercising more, right? We know we need to be getting better sleep, but we're so busy, we're so stressed out, and these things often fall to the wayside, and we have excuses and we have reasons for why we're not doing them. But at the end of the day, the process is the process, and those things are the foundations that we know we need to be doing. Step number 4 is accept and expect that it's going to be tough, it's going to be tedious, it's going to oftentimes be boring, and it can be slow moving. And here's the thing, I want you to accept and expect it, but I also, when you're in the midst of doing the thing and you tell yourself, oh, well, this is boring or this is tough, you're right. It is tough. And oftentimes it can be boring. Expect it, accept it, right? And validate yourself when you feel that way. And a lot of times you're not going to want to do it. You're not going to want to go to the gym, or you're not going to want to do that exercise that you plan for yourself. You're not going to want to do the home cooked meals. You're going to be tired. Yes. And I want you to expect for those moments. You can say, I know I don't want to do this, but I'm going to do it anyway. I know it's easy. It sounds like it's easier said than done, and it is easier said than done. But validating the fact that when you say I don't want to do this or this is going to be tough, validating yourself and then saying I'm going to do it anyway. Why? Because of step number 1. When you decided that you're going to do this and you wrote down your reason why. And that why for you is something that's strongly rooted and meaningful and impactful for you. So you see how all of these steps, they kind of play into one another and they build on one another. And they're important. So please don't skip steps. Please really take the time to think through each and every one of these steps. Step number 5 is do the work. That's a big step. If you think about it, that's like taking 3 big giant steps, right? And we're going to break down that step here in a minute. It sounds easy, but there's a lot of things that interfere with us doing the work. But that is the process. You have determined the process to get you to the goal that you set out for yourself. And you've been specific enough and you know the steps you have to take and you know how you're going to measure whether or not you were successful or not. Now comes the hard part, is actually doing the work, doing the reps, getting into the business. And that part is challenging because there's so many factors that can get in the way of us doing the work. And one of those factors is our own selves, our own limiting beliefs, our own mindset. I have actually talked about mindset on this channel, and here's one video that I'll link here where I talk specifically about mindset. But this doing the work, doing the reps, this process is not easy. This is the part where you're going to have to pull in everything that you've done up until this point to help get you through it. And one of the things that can be getting in our own way is our own selves, our own mindset, our own limiting beliefs. When it comes to our health, maybe there's a family history of certain chronic conditions. And we can tell ourselves, well, my mom had diabetes, my grandmother on my mom's side had diabetes, high cholesterol, it runs in the family, so too is my fate. But that is not always necessarily the case. Yes, family history can predispose you to certain conditions, but we have so much more control in our lifestyle to prevent, manage, or even reverse a lot of those chronic conditions. And that is where I would encourage you to focus on. Focus on where you have control, where you have the opportunity to change that trajectory of your health history, right? Your own health history. Your family history does not have to be your personal health history, okay? And again, that is a deep dive. Mindset and limiting beliefs are a whole other deep dive. I do touch on it in my some previous videos, and I will continue to talk about this. The other thing that can be holding us back is our thoughts about other people, what they're going to think, and how they're going to perceive what we're trying to do. One of the most common ones is going to the gym, right? Many of us, we have anxiety when it comes to going to the gym, being in a public setting when we're trying to work out for whatever reason, right? We might feel like we're being judged, or people are going to judge us for not knowing what to do, or judge us for how we look, or judge us for whatever reason. And we can get so worked up. We put it in our planner that we're going to the gym. We got the outfit, we got the playlist, we got the workout routine, but we start thinking about what we think other people are going to think, how other people are going to perceive us, to the point where we can actually can the whole gym. Don't even go, right? And you don't hit that actionable step that's going to get you to your goal because of our our fixation on what other people are going to think. That's one example. Or even for us trying to change our health habits, right? What that means is that we're going to move different, right? We're going to move different with our friends. We're going to move different with our family. For certain social events, we might choose different options when we go, or we might not even go if we're trying to limit our alcohol intake. Maybe you won't go to the bars as often with your friends. Or if you do, you're going to drink something different, right? And then thinking about how our friends or our family or, acquaintances are going to perceive us because we're moving differently. Are they going to think that I'm better than them? Or are they going to think that dot, 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 you name that thought. When it comes to your goals and these positive changes that you're trying to make, I encourage you to try to let them think what they will think. You can't control what other people think of us, right? If for people who are close to you, near and dear, your friends and family, having a candid conversation, letting them know, hey, I'm really trying to get my health in order because, my healthcare provider tells me that I have prediabetes, I have high cholesterol, and I really want to change that. I really want to feel better. I really want to have more energy. So I'm really focusing on my health, and I'm really focusing on the foods that I'm putting in my body. I'm really focusing on not staying up all night. For the people who you care about and who love and care about you, you can share this with them, right? And they should support you. And the other people whose opinions that you might be thinking about or worried about, we can't control what other people are going to think, how they're going to perceive us. We can share, right, in a loving way, in a candid way, and they can choose to support us or not. But oftentimes when it comes to things like this that are outside of my control, I say the serenity prayer a lot. And I ask God to help me, right? Because I am focused on being a good steward of my body so that I can fulfill my purpose, and let God's will play out. But I can't focus on how that's going to be perceived to other people, right? Some people could think, oh, you're obsessed about nutrition or you're obsessed about exercise. No, I'm not. It's a part of my lifestyle, right? And I can't control how they perceive what I'm doing. But I encourage you to try to let go of that. I know it's easier said than done, but sharing to the people who are closest to you, who love you and care about you, this thing that you're trying to do that's a positive thing for your body, your health, you should be well supported. At the end of the day, we can't control what other people think or how they perceive us, right? We can only focus on how we present ourselves and how we move and our reasons for doing that, right? It's not dismissive and it's not selfish, right? It's important. So I encourage you to look at it that way. The other part of doing the work, so when we're doing the work, I think it's really important to figure out ways to make it easy for you to do the work, right? There's a lot of friction that's involved when it comes to change, right? Change requires change, and change is not easy. So in the midst of you planning out how you're going to achieve your goals, I want you to think about your lifestyle. Think about things that can make it easier for you to make these new habit changes, create these new behaviors. I encourage you to read a book by James Clear called Atomic Habits because he really compiles a lot of things and information that we know about habits and change, and puts it in a way that is so actionable, because the change process is hard, right? You're going against the grain and you're hardwired to try to resist things that are either challenging or painful. And when it comes to changing your behaviors and your routines, that is a challenge, and that is often met with a lot of resistance, right? Even a good change is still change, and it can be challenging. Your current processes that have gotten you your current results, even though you're trying to change them, your body, what the outcome is. Like you're familiar with that outcome, whether or not you like it or not, you're familiar with that outcome. So then when you try to change something, it's all uncharted territory, right? You don't quite know the outcome yet. You have a goal, you have a specific outcome that you're looking for, but you haven't realized that outcome yet for many of us, right? So you don't actually know what that whole process is going to look like. You haven't played it out yet. So even though it's a positive change, you're going to be met with resistance. And going from, a primary sedentary state to someone who has a goal of being more active, 5 days a week, you set this goal, that is a lot. That's a big jump, right? And we can talk about making incremental changes to get you from where you are to where you want to be. Even still, even the smallest of the smallest increment is still a change from what you were before, right? And that is met with resistance. And when you have to constantly think about doing something different every day, you can get exhausted and you can get decision fatigue and you can get discouraged. So I'm saying all that to say it's going to be really important to try to make the change process easier. Find ways to make it easier for you to go to the gym. And yes, I've made a video on that as well. Find ways that's going to make it easier for you to get more home cooked meals. I talk about meal prep on my channel. These are things that you can do that make your goal and the things that you have to change easier to implement. Okay, so whatever that looks like for you. And then once you've gotten to the point where it's consistent, you've accepted that it can be challenging, and you expect it to be challenging, you're focusing on ways to make it easier for you to do these things. Then once you're getting consistent, then think about ways to make it fun, right? Because there are ways to encourage, to make things a little bit easier to do, more fun to do, even though you're expecting it to be a challenge, there is still room to try to make it fun. Oftentimes we think about that part first. We think about how can I make it fun to do this thing? And if it's not fun, then we can tend to abandon the goal. But I think if you first expect that it's going to be a challenge, expect that it might be boring and tedious, and sometimes you're not going to see the progress immediately. There are going to be periods where you don't see the progress. Expecting that and accepting it and validating yourself when you are aware of it, I think that should be primary. And then think about ways to make it fun, okay? Because when we put the fun first, sometimes it can be so hard and so challenging. And one day it's fun, but the next day it's not. And that can really mess up our consistency. So the cherry on the top is finding ways to make it fun. And it is important to enjoy what you're doing, right? To some degree. But I think that oftentimes we rely too heavily on the fun part, right? So finding the fun playlist that you're going to work out to, going shopping for new workout clothes, getting a nice new water bottle that you're excited about so you can encourage you to drink more water, getting some new appliances for your kitchen that's going to help you with the meal prep process. Things like that are going to be really important to try to also implement in the process of doing the work. Okay. Finally, we've come to step number 6. And I call that step evaluate, iterate, and standardize. That's basically my nuanced and long-winded way of saying rinse and repeat the process. But I'm very intentional about these terms because you want to evaluate what you've done. Did these actions actually work? Am I getting towards my goal? Did I achieve the outcome that I set out for? And if not, then that's where you're going to evaluate the process, right? Was it something that I can do for the long haul? Was it something that's sustainable, right? Because if your goal was weight loss, there are some ways to drop. There's a process to get you to drop a lot of weight in a very short period of time. But that's why number 6 is so important, because you're going to evaluate it. Was it healthy? My relationship with food took a hit. Is it sustainable? Is it something that I can keep doing? Is this a health habit that I would want to teach my children? Things like that. Like, that's the evaluation phase. Okay, no, if you find out, no, it wasn't sustainable. No, it wasn't healthy. Now I don't have a great relationship with food anymore. Then you want to go back to the drawing board as far as the process, right? Where in this 6-step process did things go wrong? Was your why good? Yeah. The decision to get healthy, was that solid? Yes. Was your why solid? Yes. Well, did you write it down? Yes. The plan, the process that you chose, is that where you need to revise things? Probably, right? So then you find a better plan, find a better formula for success that's going to be more in line with getting you through all of these steps in a good way. Okay. Maybe your A1C is down, but you still got to work on your blood pressure. You started exercising 5 days a week for 20 minutes a day. Now you've made that goal. You've accomplished that goal. Now you can revise your goal. So now I want to exercise 5 days a week for 30 to 45 minutes a day. So you can keep reiterating and drawing and expanding on your goals. Standardize, basically in healthcare, we call it creating a standard of care. This is now what you do. This process has been proven, it's evidence-based, and it works, and it gets good outcomes. It gets us to our positive outcomes, right? So in your life, you can now make it the standard of care, the standard of practice for you to be moving your body more. You are now someone who exercises regularly. You are now someone who eats more home-cooked meals and has healthier eating habits. You are now someone who prioritizes your sleep, okay? You are now someone who has these effective stress reduction and stress management practices, okay? It has now become your standard, your personal standard of your own care. The big thing is that these are things that are sustainable, they're healthy, and they get you to the positive outcomes that you've set before, that you've written down. The other thing that I like about when we think about things that are sustainable is that it can kind of help you let go of this idea of a timeline, or at least it did for me. I remember before, this is many years ago, before I started thinking about health as a long-term and sustainable thing, I would do those fad diets where you're trying to lose weight in a specific amount of time, get into a specific dress size or whatever. And it would be very, short term, like lose X amount of pounds in 4 weeks. It's not stuff that was sustainable. But when I let go of the timeline, I remember wanting to be healthy for the sake of being healthy and for the reason and the goal and the why that I told you before. It helped me to relax on the timeline. Like, this is just something that I want to do. It's my lifestyle. It's something that I want to be able to sustain and teach my son. These healthy habits help me focus more on factors that are within my control. How am I being a good steward of my body, nourishing my body, moving my body, taking care of myself? Because sometimes we can't always control the outcome or when the outcome happens, right? So letting go of that timeline, in my opinion, is very important, because you can be doing all the right things, but life happens, okay? Loss happens, sickness happens. But these are things that are not always reasons to give up on our goals, right? Because the decision and the why, it doesn't invalidate those things, right? But it can alter the timeline of when we get to those outcomes, or if we get to those outcomes. And for me, as a Christian, as a believer, that part, I try the timeline and the outcome, or when the outcome happens, I try to give that to God. It's very hard. I have to constantly remind myself, because I'm like to plan and map things out to include the start and the finish. But I have to constantly remind myself that I have to give that part to God and trust God's will to be done. This frees me to just keep focusing on the process and the factors that I can control, focusing on my actions and being a good steward of my mind and my body. And in my opinion, that part is tough enough. Okay, so those are the 6 steps that in the process for achieving your goals. As I alluded to throughout this video, these are all steps that kind of layer onto one another. I don't think it's like a step-based approach, like a stairway. I think of it more as these 6 steps are along a spectrum from step 1 to step 6. And you're here, you're moving back and forth in between these steps. Or even sometimes in my mind, I see it as a big circle of all the steps around in a circle, and I'm in the middle. And I'm, every now and then I'm focusing on a different step. It's not like once you reach one step, you're done. You don't look back. No, you do. You're constantly engaging. These steps are all dynamic. They're moving, and these are areas and aspects that I think is important to pay attention to when we're thinking about goal setting and actually the process towards achieving our goals. So they're dynamic, they're ever evolving, and they're not new. So, I'm sure you've heard many of these steps before. Again, it's not novel. These things are things that have been talked about by many people for many years, one way or another, right? With a little bit slightly different perspectives. And the process that you choose to actually achieve your goal is out there. It's already been written. It's already been done. So I encourage you to give these steps a try, give these steps some attention, and see how you do. Now, again, this is the first video of a series of videos that are within my Metabolic Health Starter Challenge series. And next, we're going to be talking about nutrition as it relates to metabolic health. So if this video has been helpful, please like the video and subscribe for more. And you can catch the rest of this series in this playlist here.